Welcome to our Drupal in 2021 and beyond virtual roundtable. We've got a great line of guests speaking today. So just to get started, quick run through of the agenda. We'll be starting just with the house rules. I'll be then giving passing on to Danny, our CEO, who'll be giving a quick introduction to Cyber-Duck and who we are. We'll then get into the roundtable itself, doing a quick round robin of all the speakers and into a few questions that we have. And then we'll finish up with a Q&A, giving you all a chance to ask our panelists any questions you have. So just quickly in terms of the house rules, the webinar will be running for around an hour. We will be streaming on both Zoom and YouTube. And as I said, there will be time at the end for some Q&As. To submit any of your questions, if you're on Zoom, you can open the chat window by clicking the Q&A button located at the bottom of your screen. If you're on YouTube, please use the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen or just below the video. You can also post any questions you have on Twitter after the webinar using the hashtag DrupalDuck. There's other ways you can also reach out to us via email with hello@cyber-duck.co.uk. Also on Twitter @cyberduck_UK, and then on LinkedIn as well, we're just cyber-duck. So I just want to quickly pass over to Danny to quickly introduce himself and to introduce us at Cyber-Duck.
Hi everyone, my name is Danny Bluestone. I'm the founder and CEO at a digital agency called Cyber-Duck. So we're hosting this fantastic webinar today. And actually we have guests from all over the world joining from obviously Europe, America, Asia, Africa. So a warm welcome. Hopefully the weather that you have is better than here in London today. It's extremely rainy, and it's been raining for quite a while. So yeah, Cyber-Duck, what we do is essentially transform digital. We've been doing it for over 15 years now. We take very complex projects, quite often it's multiple applications and websites that need to be merged together. Hence kind of Cyber-Duck choosing Drupal as its preferred content management system. We're also ISO certified and follow an ISO accredited user-centered design process, which involves a lot of user research and also change management, where we look at technology holistically. We undertake a lot of data auditing as well to make sure that we understand what we're dealing with for every single project, because obviously data is incredibly important today. Whilst we're established in the UK and have offices in London and Hertfordshire, we have team members all over the world and in America and obviously in Europe as well. Yeah, pretty much almost 70 to 80 people now in terms of our headcounts. We have a lot of breadth and depth. So essentially we help clients with the strategy, consultancy, design, builds, and obviously supports of Drupal websites. So we're really excited to host this webinar today. In terms of some of our client projects, so we tend to do a lot of different projects. One of them is the Sport England website, which is essentially funded by the taxpayer in the UK. So they have obviously a responsibility to bring sports and health to the forefront of British citizens. In this particular project, again, it was a consolidation of digital assets, creating a new Drupal website, undertaking content strategy, and making the website extremely accessible to disabled users as well. So again, great project with a brand new art direction that really has elevated their brand. Another really great project that we're proud to work on at the moment is the College of Policing, which again deals with multiple personas and involved the consolidation of digital and web assets into one brand new website, where again we had to do user research from obviously personas all the way to finding the best way to make this particular website accessible and extremely usable. So again, another great project which required a modern and slick design that we're very proud to work with the College of Policing as well.
Thank you very much for that, Danny. I'm now just going to switch over to gallery mode. So hopefully you'll be able to see our full lineup of speakers very soon. So I think just to get started, what would be really good to do is a quick round robin of everyone, just to introduce who they are, what they do, and really their, I guess, experience and relationship with Drupal. So maybe let's start with you, Sylvain. Could you just please introduce yourself?
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Sylvain Reiter. I'm the Client Services Officer at Cyber-Duck. So I bridge the gap between kind of new business and project management and the delivery of our project. So I get involved early on, kind of pre-sales, to help our client define the right solution. So based on their digital challenge, look at what platform would be most suitable. Usually convince them that Drupal is when it's applicable, and then take that through all the way through delivery and helping the team keep the quality up.
That's brilliant. Duncan, how about yourself?
Hi, my name's Duncan Worrell. I've been at Cyber-Duck for over a year now. I am a technical lead here at Cyber-Duck, and I specialize in Drupal. I've been working with Drupal since the end of Drupal 5, beginning of Drupal 6, so well over a decade. And my job here is not so much a developer, more of I lead a team of developers. So we take client requirements and we turn them into beautiful, wonderful, accessible Drupal websites. So I'm involved today because I have a big stake in trying to encourage people to move from Drupal 7 to get onto Drupal 8 and Drupal 9. So that's what this webinar is about. It's talking about why that's a good idea and why you should be thinking about it now.
How about yourself, Matt?
My name is Matt Glauman. I just started my own consultancy, Bluehorn Digital, but I've been working with Drupal for about 7 years now. So I think that was like mid D7 lifecycle. But I've been fortunate enough to work using Drupal to help businesses build their own applications that help them succeed at their goals.
That's great. Suzanne, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure, my name is Suzanne Dargacheva. I'm one of the co-founders of Evolving Web. We're an agency based in Montreal, and we take on all kinds of Drupal projects. And over the years, my role has changed a lot. It's been about 12 years using Drupal. So I've gone from doing more of the development technical side to the UX content strategy side. So I usually help clients kind of bridge that gap between what they want to build, what their users need, and how to actually do it in Drupal.
Great. And last but not least, Alessandro, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, happy to. So my name is Alex Moreno. I've been a software engineer for a couple of decades. I think I'm the older chap in the group here. And I've been as a technical architect for around 6 years, 4 of them working with Acquia. And yeah, what I do is kind of really flexible in terms of a TA, a technical architect, can be between a software developer that has to jump on specific tasks, or I can be one day a business analyst just getting requirements from customers and maybe doing estimations and things like that, right? If I have to jump on something, actual hands-on, it means that things are going wrong. But yeah, sometimes I do it as well.
That's brilliant. So when we ran our Twitter poll before this webinar, the most popular thing people wanted to know about was Drupal against other CMSs. And I think that's a good place to start. So, it'd be good to get a better understanding from all of you about how Drupal compares to things like WordPress Gutenberg with the .NET options out there and other modern CMS options, and if Drupal is now the CMS of choice. So Sylvain, perhaps you could start here.
Yeah, sure. So I guess from what we see from most clients, whether they're kind of in corporate world or government entities, mostly UK based, clients usually want a platform that's easy to use, that is cost effective and kind of brings them value for money. But on the other hand, that remains flexible enough because there's always kind of custom features, custom requirements, custom branding. So they want the best of both worlds. And I think we found that, yeah, most of the time Drupal is the most enterprise-ready platform on the open source side. There are, the debate between PHP and .NET is never ending, but from our side, we've been specializing in the PHP and open source world since day one. So it's going to be where we're leaning towards. And it's just, WordPress, you mentioned the WordPress CMS. It's okay for blogging platform, but we've all experienced kind of struggles in terms of maintenance and plugin and patching and things like that. So Drupal is much more enterprise ready. And in the last 10, 15 years, we've been using it. It's been quite an easy sell. Everyone is convinced that it's the right platform. And when we deliver it, also, we've got great feedback in terms of editors' experience, developers' experience from our side, and the custom feature we can deliver.
That's brilliant. Suzanne, it'd be brilliant to bring you in next. Again, just get a few more thoughts from you around Drupal versus some of the other CMS systems out there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know when we first adopted Drupal, it was really because of its flexibility, because we could really build a system that was multilingual out of the box. It just had so many more features than the other things available 10 years ago. And over time, I think that's just increased. Like what you get with Drupal core is now quite substantial, and you're still able to customize it. It's still flexible enough that it's, designed to be built for whatever business needs you have. So that's all great. Last year, I also had the chance to kind of do a comparative study between different CMSs as part of the admin UX study for Drupal. So we lined up Drupal against WordPress, against Craft CMS, and some of these other options, Contentful. And what we saw is that some of the other interfaces, out of the box, they might provide really simple tools that are content editor focused, but as soon as you start layering on more functionality and letting the content editors do more, Drupal just provides a lot more flexibility with how to do that. So it's like you can build the best content editor experience, but it is a responsibility for the site owner to kind of maintain that and build that into the platform.
It's great. Alessandro, it'd be brilliant again to bring you in here next, get a few more thoughts from you as well around Drupal's position in the sort of CMS market.
Yeah, I can't agree more with Susanne and Sylvain, because one of the reasons I started with Drupal is because I fall in love with the possibilities that you have, right? You have other options where everything is much easier. At least the learning curve, you can see that everywhere, like Drupal is much higher compared to WordPress, for example, right? But the kind of things that you can do after you pass that curve is much more rich, right? You can connect a lot of systems. You can pretty much have whatever you want to, you can imagine in your mind, right? I think the other thing that we don't discuss enough is that this is not probably a fight against maybe Drupal and WordPress. We always say Drupal and WordPress, but the real competitors are out there, and they are the systems that are proprietary, right? When someone moves to WordPress from Drupal, or just the way around, no one loses really, because they stay in the community, and somehow we retrofit, each other. When someone moves to some proprietary system, this is a loss for everyone, right?
Yeah, that's brilliant. Matthew, what are your sort of thoughts on, I guess, Drupal versus some of the modern CMS systems out there and competitors?
Yeah, so the past 5 years I spent building e-commerce sites. And if there's one thing Drupal is good at, it's content. And then with Drupal Commerce, you have content and commerce in one platform. And there's no competitor that really does that. Or if you even try to tie Drupal into another e-commerce platform, you still have some limitations from there. So that's definitely one where Drupal stands out against any other CMS. It's just the ability to have content and commerce in one single platform and the ease of integrating to your external systems. And for one example, we had a site that had, the content managers could build any custom landing page. So I think they had 100 different landing pages for different markets, and they had 20 different checkout flows for different experiences and upgrade paths. And that's something that no other CMS or either other e-commerce system could have supported. And they were enabled by Drupal to do that.
Brilliant. And Duncan, how about your thoughts on what's been said, and again, just on Drupal up against other kind of, I guess, CMS platforms?
Yeah, I mean, all the people here, we all love Drupal, so you know we're going to be biased. The other CMSs out there will have their place. WordPress is very easy to pick up. It's the most used CMS out there. I think the other competitors, really, we're talking about Adobe Experience Manager and Sitecore. They have big costs up front. You know, the license fees, 100 grand, 200 grand before you've even, before you even started looking at your actual functionality. Where Drupal shines really is the experience out of the box. It is not as good out of the box as things like WordPress, but what you'll see is, and the studies have been done on this, what you'll see is that and the more you use Drupal, the happier you get with it. And the converse is true of many of the other content management systems out there. And that includes the big players I've just talked about. As time goes on, you get more and more frustrated with them. So Drupal can be used for pretty much anything. It's called a CMS, but you could argue it's a web experience management system. It's a digital asset management tool. It can be anything. You can repurpose it for anything. So it's very flexible from that point of view. It has lots of links to external systems, things like Salesforce and on all those great things, including great SEO, great accessibility. And the reason it breathes and lives for me is because of the great community behind it. And some of those people are in the room now for sure. Yes, other CMSs have those communities behind them. But some of the proprietary systems, if you want to change, you might have to wait a year for them. Whereas with Drupal, the core is good out of the box, but what makes it shine really is the functionality you can bolt onto it. So the contrib modules, and some of those are awesome. And Matt touched on one, the commerce solutions that are out there. So I think that's where it shines for me. It's not a jack of all trades. I wouldn't call it that. That sort of have negative connotations these days. But what it is, it's a powerful base on which to construct a very flexible system that manages content. I don't want to call it a content management system, but that's what it's called. So I think that's where it shines for me.
That's great. I think obviously one of the things we've been talking about a lot at Cyber-Duck, and I'm sure across all of our speakers is the same, has been Drupal 9. I think it'll be good to kind of talk a little bit more about what does Drupal 9 tell us about the future of Drupal, and I guess this idea of a shift towards continuous innovation. So perhaps, Alessandro, you could sort of start us off here.
Yeah, so one of the big deals about not just Drupal 9, right, but about, well, yeah, actually a bit about Drupal 8, about moving from that version towards the next one is that actually it's not a big deal, right? That's the big deal. And it's because the massive change that we have in Drupal 7, moving to Drupal 8, in which the next iterations will be like minor upgrades, right? We are not going to have any more big bangs like it happened Drupal 5 to 6, 6 to 7, where it was not just an upgrade, it was like 7 to 8 is a replatforming and all the costs involved on that, right? In which, by the way, there are some good news in which the company, the community, and a lot of people is working on fixing that. And things like something that has been criticized for some people, not everyone, is the Symfony, right? The moving towards the Symfony core and moving towards all the coding standards and everything in that community. I think that's only benefits because the people in the Drupal community can focus on not reinventing the wheel, right? Reusing the things that are already on the current Symfony. Super basic things like getting a cool, for example, connection that on the beginning it was part of a Drupal core, and that took a lot of time to maintenance in the core, right? Now we are just using a library from Symfony. And all that means that suddenly all that time that we don't have to invest on maintaining that things on the core, we can have it for innovation in Drupal 8 and Drupal 9 and whatever is coming, right?
Yes, that's a great answer. Suzanne, what does, I guess, continuous innovation mean to you with Drupal?
One of the things that I've seen recently, or that I've tried to recommend to clients to do, is to kind of change the model around how we think about redesigning a site, relaunching a site, or ongoing maintenance and support. Because I don't think that people think anymore that once you launch your site that it's finished and you can just leave it there for 5 years until you want to redesign it. I think that there's more of a long-term investment that organizations are making in their digital presence. So I think that aligns really well with the new life cycle of Drupal, where we have new feature releases every 6 months. And I say new, but this has been going on since the launch of Drupal 8. And as that continues for Drupal 9 and 10, and we don't have this big replatforming between major versions, I think it allows organizations to invest more over time in their website. And I think that there's a big advantage to doing that, both because then you can take advantage of the features that are released every 6 months, but also in that you can make continuous improvements of your own for your own business needs.
Great. And Matt, same question. What does, I guess, continuous innovation mean to you?
So I think it proves that semantic versioning works. That every 6 months we get something new. And I think back to the early days of Drupal 8 when like 8.2 came out. To me, like 8.2 was still a little rough around the edges, but 8.3 is when it really started to pick up steam. And since then, we have seen the addition of media, content management, or content moderation, layout builder, which for the Drupal 7 folks, layout builder is basically Panelizer in core. And we've been able to see workspaces get to be developed. And what this ends up turning into, for anybody that's had to help someone manage the Wix site or any of these, like what you see is what you get website builders, they are drag and drop building, which is what layout builder is achieving. And you can also publish, or you can create versions of the site where you work in a draft and then publish. And that's what workspaces and content moderation gives you. So within just the life cycle of Drupal 8 and all these minor versions, we've been able to shift to this new experience that is more friendly to marketers and content managers, that lets them work in almost like a sub-staging version of the production site and not modify what everybody else sees. And that has been possible by doing these every 6 month minor release, because every 6 months we get a new core feature possibly, and then there can be more contributed modules built around that, which drives the innovation more and can be pushed to improvements in core. So it's just a lot faster. You're seeing new things be turned around.
That's great. And you know, something we've been speaking about on previous webinars that we've run has been around, I guess, the upgrade process and the roadmap itself. I think this would be a great thing to kind of talk to Duncan Silverman about is, you know, what do Drupal 7 and 8 users really need to know about upgrading to Drupal 9, and why is it important not to delay this? Perhaps Duncan, we could start with you.
Yeah, Drupal 7 was released on 5th of January 2011. I checked just for this webinar. So it's coming up for 10 years old. That Drupal 7 was great. I used Drupal 6, it was great. Drupal 7 was better. But you know, that Drupal 7 website, I feel was a bit embarrassing. If you pulled an iPhone 4S out of your pocket, people would probably snigger. The iPhone 4S was released about 10 years ago as well. So it's the same age as Drupal 7. When I first saw Drupal 8, I looked at it and went, oh, that hasn't really got what I need. And I turned off it. I was turned off a little bit. And as Matt said, it needed to wait a couple of versions before it started to pick up. So there'll be people stuck on Drupal 7 now who looked at 8 and didn't like it and have stuck with 7. There's something like, I can't remember what the number is, it's either 300,000 or 700,000 Drupal 7 websites. Drupal 7 is end of life in about 2 years' time. And Drupal 8 is end of life in 11 months' time. So we have this weird scenario where the Drupal 7 people or users have got an extra year, but you're missing out. If you're on Drupal 7, you're missing out, because Drupal 8 is way better than Drupal 7 ever was. And in fact, the migration from 7 to 8, you shouldn't really do. You should go from 7 to 9. But it's not a migration. We've done some webinars on this before. Feel free to go and check them out. They're on YouTube. But basically, there's a great graphic that I've seen which shows Drupal 6 and Drupal 7 as a train track, and they come to an end. And you have to get off the train, grab all your luggage, go and find the Drupal 8 train and get on that train. That won't happen with Drupal 8 onwards. The migration from Drupal 8 to 9 is really easy. It's like arriving at the platform, hanging around for a couple of minutes and moving on to Drupal 9. We did a test upgrade for the Sport England website, which Danny covered at the beginning, and it took us a day to upgrade from 8 to 9. The migration from 9 to 10 is coming in about 2 years time. That's going to be really silky smooth. So I guess the message for people on Drupal 7 is, yeah, okay, you've got slightly less than 2 years before you start losing security support for Drupal 7. But if you're on Drupal 7, it's a bit embarrassing. Go to Drupal 8, straight to 9 if you can. And for those on Drupal 8, you need to move to Drupal 9. And that's really because of the elements that Matt's talked about. Drupal took a lot of core away and replaced it with Symfony. Symfony becomes end of life next November, or the version of Symfony that Drupal uses, which is why Drupal 8 goes end of life about the same time. So if you're on Drupal 8, you need to move off by November, but it's relatively easy. If you're on Drupal 7, you should get off the Drupal 7 train, because the Drupal 7 train is powered by Steam, and the electric one is much better, Drupal 8 or 9. So you should move to Drupal 9 as soon as you can. Is that a good analogy, Matt? I can see you smiling there.
Sylvan, was there anything you'd just want to add, I guess, to what Duncan spoke about? And again, maybe any of the key points that perhaps we've spoken about in previous webinars?
Yeah, I think it's not missing out on feature. Obviously, that's the exciting part. But again, thinking client side and the value for money, the longer you stay on Drupal 7, the more expensive it's going to get, because even the developers don't like working on old code, and some of the modules have stopped being supported because the maintainers now are focusing on the Drupal 8 and 9 version. So even though it might still be supported, it's not going to be the most cost-effective way of running your website. So it's time to upgrade. It might be an opportunity as well to potentially review all the user experience, review all your navigation, information architecture, anything that you've been putting off and when you have not invested enough maybe on your website and it's lagging behind, and it's time for a refresh. So it always brings a lot of new opportunities. It does require an investment. It is a big project to migrate, but over the long term, as we've explained, you're going to have so many new features, much easier upgrades in the future, and new capabilities, like all this API-driven approach to connect to the system. And it makes Drupal 9 now makes it even better than all the competitors. To tie that back to the previous questions when we're comparing it, it's more than just a content management system now, and it can rival all the headless CMS and all the e-commerce tools and stuff like that. So yeah, it's really a good time to do it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I know there's something we've very much again been speaking about, is that there's still quite a lot of websites that are still using Drupal 7 that never made the upgrade to Drupal 8. Again, it'd be good to kind of, I guess, get a bit more information from all of you just around, what are the Drupal 7 users missing from not upgrading to Drupal 8 and now with Drupal 9. Perhaps, Matt, we could start with you.
I think one of the main things that Drupal 7 users would be missing is I know not everybody likes object-oriented programming, but the modern programming design patterns put into Drupal 8 are phenomenal. So in Drupal 7, one of the projects I was on is we built a web hosting platform. It was what you see is what you get website builder built on Panoply. But the problem is if you needed to customize panels or views, like you had to copy all of the code. Like you're like copying modules sometimes to customize them, or you're writing some really extravagant hooks. But in Drupal 8, it uses a service container and classes, and you're able to oftentimes say, I know this is the default implementation. I want to swap it with my own. And with that flexibility, you're able to develop and iterate and customize Drupal in ways that you couldn't in Drupal 7. You're able to just change default functionality without copying code, without saying, oh, I need to alter this form. Well, I'm going to do a hook form alter, and it's going to be a 1,000-line long function. It's like, no, I'm just going to swap out the class, or I'm going to extend it and just override these certain parts of the methods. So it is a much better developer experience that does help save time and creates more maintainable code. I think that's probably the biggest thing people will be missing out on if they're still in D7 land.
Suzanne, again, same thing. You know, what are some of the people who have Drupal 7 websites sort of missing out on?
I think definitely when we're talking to people looking at switching, or just, you know, at this point where they're deciding, should we move to the newer versions of Drupal or should we switch platforms? It always depends who we're talking to, kind of what their criteria are and what they're thinking. So definitely on the technical side, I think there's a lot of these improvements. I think when we're talking to more like marketing and communications teams, they often have a radically new way of thinking of their digital strategy, because usually Drupal 7 sites were built, you know, more than 5 years ago, right? So often there's a desire to have more control from the marketing and communications team, and they're looking for new tools that will let them build out that strategy. So layout builder is often an important selling point, or some of the other content authoring tools now, like content moderation and media libraries. So those types of content editor improvements are really important selling points. But I also think that if you're rebuilding your site, you're moving from 7 to 9, you're going to have so many opportunities to just improve the website overall. And then the last thing, which I think is something that people don't often think about, it's like the improvements down the line that you don't even know you need yet. Like Drupal is so much more forward-looking than other platforms that I've seen in terms of accessibility. And that's going to benefit you now, but it's also going to benefit you in the future. You know, if there's new regulations that the back end of your website also needs to be accessible, and you need to comply with authoring guidelines around accessibility, platforms like WordPress aren't addressing those things, but in Drupal, it's always top of mind. It's always a priority. We've seen that with the layout builder, for example. The layout builder project really emphasized accessibility. So I think that's really what sets Drupal apart.
That's a great answer. Alessandro, again, kind of same thing for you. Be good to know just a bit more about as well, kind of, I guess, work you're doing to help people with Drupal 7 sites.
Yeah, so I think it all ends up on being on Drupal 7 is just keeping the site alive, right? We are not putting a lot of innovation in there. We're just making sure, my Google, okay, is jumping, sorry. Making sure that the site is not dying, that we keep modules updated, security patches, everything, right? Because at the end, the community is focused on Drupal 8 and Drupal 9, and all that innovation that we are talking about is going in there. But what is more, when you're on Drupal 7 and suddenly you start to want to make things, you start to find it more and more difficult to do things that in Drupal 8 and Drupal 9 it pretty much come out of the box, right? Things like connecting systems like Salesforce or similar with Drupal 8 and the API first initiative is super easy. In Drupal 7, it took a lot of effort to do that and weeks of development, right? In terms of how to make the transition, because at the end, one of the things that we were talking before is it takes a lot of effort to do the migration from Drupal 7 and to Drupal 8, and it's pretty much a replatforming. You have to rebuild everything, including theming, including everything, right, from top to bottom. That's actually kind of improving, and one of the things that Acquia is working a lot is trying to decrease the time and decrease the cost that takes to do that, right? We have Acquia Migrate, that if you are in the platform, you will just have an extra environment, and you will be able to have a UI that you are going to click a button, and it will take your Drupal 7 site and put that whole site in a brand new shiny Drupal 8, on which you still have to do a lot of work. Probably you will have to tweak things like that, right? But we are trying to improve the life of customers and partners doing things like that.
Great. Duncan, it'd be great to come to you again on this same kind of topic around the, I guess, importance of upgrading to from Drupal 7, but also, you know, what people who've been running on Drupal 7 websites have been kind of missing out on.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we experienced at Drupal 7 is if you needed a new type of page, a new layout, then typically you'd have to ask the people who look like me to do it for you, because it wasn't really very flexible. There were some things that you could do in 6 and 7 panels and Panelizer. They all worked very well, but they were very techy, very dev-focused tools. The layout builder now, which we keep talking about, but if you're on 7, you won't have a clue what we're talking about. It's a drag and drop UI for creating new pages, and what it means is you can put the content of the site much more in the hands of marketers, and that's a general trend that's happening, is that sites are controlled by the marketing team these days. That you're not just creating news articles and blog articles and adding products to a shop. People want to create brand new landing pages, and the ability to do that in Layout Builder is absolutely brilliant. If you're stuck on 6 and 7, then you won't have a clue what the media library is all about. It's a good step on the way to being a proper digital asset management tool. So you can, rather than just uploading a picture for a news article, you actually put the picture in the library so you can reuse it over and over again, rather than re-uploading it every time. So all those things are huge steps forward in Drupal 8, and they'll just continue to improve as we go through on Drupal 9. The big deal with Drupal 9, and Alessandro has already said this, is the big deal on Drupal 9 is there's no big deal. You can move from 8 to 9 really, really easy. So if you're on 8, just move to 9. If you're on 7, there's a whole load of things which are great. The media management, the layout builder, but there's also quite a lot of stuff that just makes the developer's life easier. And at the end of the day, if it's easier for developers to do some development, then it's cheaper for those people who own those websites to get changes done. It's great for multilingual websites. It's mobile first, but increasingly we're seeing big improvements in the accessibility arena. There's legislation in the UK and the US now that new sites are supposed to be accessible. Whether you're colorblind, completely blind, or you're using a screen reader, or any number of things like that. Drupal is so good at. They have a working group, and their remit is to make Drupal more accessible. And for example, the College of Policing website, which Danny talked about at the beginning, we designed that website with accessibility in mind, and we had an external company come in and audit that, and we scored 95% out of the box. That's a really good score. And in fact, we fixed the final 5% within a couple of weeks. We think we're about 99. We haven't had it retested yet. So Drupal's really good at doing that, and Drupal 7 isn't. There's so much that Drupal 8 and 9 will give you that you don't have in 7. But the biggest thing is control. I think it hands the control back to the site owner, so they don't have to rely so heavily on the developers, and that's the biggest thing for me.
That's a great answer. I think there's been some brilliant answers given this question. I think something that Suzanne mentioned was earlier was that Drupal has always been very forward-looking. In fact, actually already we know that Drupal 10 is targeted for June 2022. So, I guess again, what would be interesting to know is, what I guess do we know already about Drupal 10, if anything? How aware do we need to be about this change? And then I guess to kind of like wrap up, would be, what kind of future changes from Drupal do we want to see? And maybe Alessandro, we can start with you on this one.
Yeah, that's difficult to answer, but it's a good timing because next week is DrupalCon in Barcelona, right? And one of the things that I always look forward for DrupalCons is the Dries note, or the keynote by Dries Buttert. And this is where actually Dries announces the things that are coming, right? And this week, I expect it will be a lot about Drupal 10. But, although we still don't know what is going to be the big highlights, I think we have some clues. Especially if you look at the initiatives that experimental features that we have in the community right now, we can probably see that automatic updates and workspaces will be coming alive on Drupal 9. And Drupal 10 maybe is going to bring the some React or Vue.js or some other framework. I think it's going to be more React, right? Pointing to that. But yeah, it's going to be an exciting week next one.
Again, Suzanne, I guess what are you expecting from Drupal in the future, and what I guess is the kind of thing you would be excited to see?
Yeah, I think all these features that we're talking about now are really user experience focused, which is what I love, like focused on making the lives better for site owners and content editors. So things like automatic updates, that's one of the #1, I think it's probably the #1 feature that's requested if you just ask site owners what they want to kind of lower the cost of ownership of Drupal. So it's exciting to see things heading in that direction. At the same time, Drupal's an open source project, so there's like initiatives and there's direction, and I think Dries provides this kind of leadership of like, here's where he thinks things are going, but he also takes a lot of ideas from users. Every year he does a product survey, and developers give input, end users give input. So you really see that he's also looking to the larger community of contributors, but also people who are users who are not contributing, to see what features they're looking for. So there's a combination of like that direction and also what contributors spend time on. So things like workspaces and automatic updates, I mean, that's required a tremendous effort from developers, and you have to have people who are really passionate about these features and making Drupal better for that work to take place.
So that's a brilliant answer. Matt, same question for you.
Yeah, so it's today, Dries put out a tweet that was shared the Symfony announcement that they're creating tighter integration with JavaScript. I didn't get a chance to read the article yet, but I think we need to come to terms with JavaScript has eaten the world. I don't think any marketer or any person we consider a marketer that doesn't know JavaScript, because when you're in Google Tag Manager, Adobe Tag Manager, Telium, any of those, you need to write JavaScript to integrate with the page to do A/B testing, to fetch data. So I feel that we'll be having more integration with JavaScript. There's already the decoupled menu initiative for Drupal 9, which is going to say, how can we make menu management better for headless systems, but also ship a front-end component? So I think Drupal 10 will be seeing more of that. And that's a good thing, because it makes Drupal an even broader content repository. I spent the past 2 years working with headless Drupal, and people have mobile apps. There's people who have used Drupal to build like learning, like education systems, and the primary way they engage with it is over tablets and native mobile apps. And Drupal's the backend for it. We're empowering people to create more experiences with these headless and JavaScript functionalities. So I think we'll see a lot more of that coming down the line.
Yeah, that's great. Duncan, anything, I guess, to add on to what has just been said?
Yeah, I think we're moving from a place where Drupal was a CMS to being a really good structured data engine. So you're much more focused on making the creation of the back end, so the content creators making their life way easier, much more, much easier, like WordPress is easy, but with that same rich functionality that Drupal's always thrived on. And as Matt says, with that JavaScript front end being an option if you wanted it, wanted to use that. Now, in terms of all the good things that are coming in Drupal 9, I mean, Drupal 9.1 was released yesterday, and for those that don't know about these things, Drupal 9.1, for example, added full support for PHP 8, which was released probably last week, was it? Very, very recently anyway. So, it's right up to date from that point of view. But what we will see is, I think something we've touched on before, back to this train line analogy, is that rather than the big changes coming when we go from 9 to 10, the change between 9 and 10 will be nothing, like no big deal. Where you will see the changes is in 9.1, 9.2, 9.3, and 10.1 and 10.2 as we go on. So the point at which Drupal will change is changing. The changes will be incremental rather than fundamental. So you'll see the changes coming quicker. and it's up to your developers, I guess, and to speak to your marketers and say, okay, these new features in Drupal, how can you make best use of that? I think that's probably the most exciting thing for Drupal. We talk about automatic updates. Going back to my earlier phone analogy, is you don't expect to have to, to do very much to keep your phone up to date these days, and people don't expect to have to do the same sort of thing for their websites. So the idea is it would be optional. You can turn on automatic updates, so your Drupal website will stay up to date automatically. I'm as a developer, I'm quite nervous about that. I don't know how well it will work. I suspect that I guess people will disable it initially and then try it and see how it goes, and then the confidence will grow as we move through Drupal 9 and into Drupal 10. But I think the most exciting thing for me is the initial user experience of Drupal. When you show Drupal to a new client who's never used it before, it's often, oh, that looks quite hard. And yeah, as a developer and as I think as a user, it's not particularly steep learning curve, but there is a learning curve that you don't see with things like WordPress. And I think that's where we'll see the biggest improvement as we move forward through 9 and into 10. But the fundamental change is there's no change between 9 and 10. This new stuff will just drift out, and we'll wonder how we ever missed it. The other thing, of course, is we're sort of talking about core Drupal here. The other half of Drupal is all the contributed modules, and we don't know what people are working on in the background on contributed modules. Things like commerce, which Matt's involved with, they'll keep rolling out changes, but there may be other contributing modules that come along that we wonder how on earth we ever live without them, and that's what's so good about Drupal. The way it works, being open source with such a huge community, people are developing things all the time, and that makes the future of Drupal really exciting for me.
Great. And maybe Sylvain, before we move on to some of our attendees' questions, could you just give us a bit more of a wrap up of what we've just kind of talked about, and really, I guess, for Cyber-Duck, why we're kind of excited as well about the future of Drupal and working on more Drupal projects?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks. Recapping everything that's been said so far. One point we haven't touched is also on the compliance and the hosting security of it. So all your kind of IT systems running Drupal, keeping that secure, all the GDPR regulation. So again, it's another reason to invest into the newer platform that will be maintained for the long term, rather than trying to keep your existing site alive, as Alejandro said. It's a better investment for the future overall. So yeah, at Cyber-Duck, we're considering all of that, the improvement to the end user experience and all the accessibility benefits, including the editor's experience, as Suzanne mentioned, and then all the technical integration with third-party system, marketing automation, CRMs, ERP, back office, those type of things. We can manage all those, kind of embrace all the digital transformation that's happening everywhere, even kind of with COVID accelerating all of that, and deliver better value for money for all the clients. So yeah, really exciting future.
Brilliant. So I think it'll be good to now answer some of the questions that we've had through. Again, if anyone does have any, please drop them either in the Q&A or the chat function. To maybe start, we have a question from Andre here, which is, how frequently are these migrations required? And is a large team required to manage that over time? Who would like to answer this question? Duncan.
Yeah, if we're talking about migrating from 7, it's a big lift. It's hard. There is no code migration from 7 to 8. You need to create yourself a new Drupal 8 website and then migrate your data. It's like getting off of the platform, grabbing your luggage, putting it over your shoulder, moving it all across. It's hard work. And you might think that's a good excuse to say, okay, now Drupal's caused me all this pain, all this cost. I'm going to drop Drupal. Your marketing team, your content creators, and your business knows Drupal. So that's one reason to stick with Drupal. Also, once you're on 8, it should be plain sailing from then on. As I've said, we upgraded a major Drupal 8 website to Drupal 9 in a day. It's really easy. So once you're on 8, it's that pain point goes away. Does that answer the question? I think so.
So that's a great answer. We have one here from John. It's a fantastic question here. Who can name an initiative that ushers in the next generation of Drupal developers, or is Drupal still relevant to the youngest devs? Again, maybe Suzanne, you could answer this one.
So there's a Promote Drupal initiative, which has been going on for the last few years, and there's been spurts where it's been very active and less active, and we're always looking for new people to volunteer and come in. So it's basically the Drupal Association working with the community to come up with, tools for agencies to promote Drupal, but also like going out into the community, going out beyond the Drupal bubble and spreading the word about Drupal. And so, of course, one of our audiences is end users, like people adopting a platform. So that's one audience. But again and again, this notion that we have to do a better job of promoting Drupal to new developers and getting more people on board with the Drupal skills is been discussed. And alongside that, the Drupal Association is also piloting a training program. So getting people from especially more diverse backgrounds, people who don't usually get involved in open source, and providing scholarships for them to learn Drupal. So that's something to watch for the new Drupal training program.
Yeah, I would probably add as well, Drupal is still relevant, especially the newest version, 8 or 9. The underlying framework is, as Matt mentioned earlier, the object-oriented programming and sharing the Symfony framework. It is the best place to learn, actually, to do proper coding. So it's very relevant. All the integration with JavaScript we mentioned in the future as well, if you want to be more kind of on the front-end side as a young developer. It's the leading framework with Vue, React, this type of thing. So throughout the full stack, it's even easier to learn than Drupal 7 and the right way of doing programming. So very relevant.
Yeah, the nice thing as well about Drupal is you can load up a Drupal website easily. And if you're a hobbyist or a young developer, get it installed, start playing with it. There's loads of areas you might be interested in. You could be interested in, going headless, learning more JavaScript, or you can get into Drupal theming. That might be your bag, the CSS side of things, using Twig templates or module development. My experience of Drupal 8 is there's way less custom development than there ever was in Drupal 7. You can do pretty much everything with a module these days. And I know there's a Drupal saying, which I always use, that there's a module for that, and very often there is. Most of the projects we work on these days is very little custom coding. That wasn't true of Drupal 7. Drupal 7 was constantly having to create hooks. There's not so much of that in Drupal 8, which sometimes means as a Drupal developer you're doing much more configuration than you are coding. But there's loads to learn about in Drupal generally, and I think it's a good platform to get into. We use a lot of Laravel also at Cyber-Duck, but that uses a similar sort of framework, the Symfony-based sort of framework. So it's a good place to learn.
I actually had one thing I wanted to add on that too. And I know a lot of people in the Drupal community wanted to like bash Composer because they don't like having to use a new tool. Yet JavaScript, you use Yarn, NPM. I think with Drupal 9 and the fact, I believe it was 8.9, we gave full Composer support for Drupal core. That will get new developers, because before it was so annoying setting up Drupal. It's like, use the community Composer template and this, and it was just such a problem on just starting a Drupal site. Now it's Composer, create Drupal/recommended Hive project. You're done. You're good to go. We'll get more developers involved with it, because I believe this year alone was the most jobs created for programming were in PHP, maybe because a lot of legacy applications need to get work done on it, but PHP is still a hot language. Drupal solves good problems. And now Drupal 9 finally has modern tooling. Drupal 7 didn't have modern tooling. Drupal 8 kind of did, like we could use Composer, but honestly, the tooling helps get people to want to use it, because Laravel, use Artisan and you just manage your whole site. Symfony, just use the console and you get to manage your whole site. So now that we have full Composer support, once we hopefully get like Drush core or something like that, we'll get more developers attracted to it because it has built-in tooling. And that will get the young, fresh blood, in my opinion.
It's also interesting that what is going to happen is that we are starting to talk less about trying to bring people to Drupal, because people is already in Drupal. If you show Drupal 8 or Drupal 9 to someone who has been working on Symfony, he will say, oh, look, I know this. I can just jump and work on this, right? Because it's object-oriented and it's using the same libraries that Symfony is using. And related to the question that they were talking about React, is the same in Drupal 8. In Drupal 7, actually, you could do it, right? We connected at BBC Drupal 7 using a React application to make some parts of the website much faster, right? That could be done in Drupal 7, but it took a lot of effort. In Drupal 8, nowadays, something that they have to publish in the next weeks is we can create a small React applications that they don't have anything of Drupal in there. And that's one of the complaints that people were always having, a lot of Drupalisms. This is gone. This is history, not anymore, right? You can build your small React application and just connect it to Drupal, super simple. And the guy who is working on the React application, he doesn't have to know anything about Drupal to make the connections, right?
Brilliant. We've had a couple more questions through as well. We have one here from Michael. Any thoughts around syncing commerce with Salesforce and a variety of payment gateways in Drupal 8 and above? Ideas to command and also capture commerce activity using Salesforce. Matt, maybe this is one for you.
So this is a whole topic that could be like a side thing. But one, Salesforce is slow. So aware when you do integrations, whether it's commerce or not, Salesforce throws their API and makes you pay a lot of money to make it fast. So it's completely feasible. The one site that I brought up that had like 20 different checkout flows, when the order was completed, actually the order ended up getting deleted in commerce. They didn't track it past there. It got pushed to their subscription system. And then in Salesforce, it created the account, contact, the opportunity line items, and tied into their pricing books. So you're able to completely map it in and tie it in with Salesforce. And at that point, it's just Drupal has event subscribers. So you listen to certain events and you use that to know when to send data out to Salesforce and tie it in between the two systems. So again, Drupal makes it really easy to plug into different events and integrate with the existing systems, or using like cron or other like the contrib module advanced queue to pull data in from Salesforce and tie it into your Drupal content.
I think just as one last question we've had again from Andre Hare, who said that I think I've been sold on Drupal as my best option as a young developer trying to build a complex web app. Can you recommend any good place to learn Drupal from zero knowledge? So maybe everyone could perhaps just give a little answer of somewhere they would suggest to go. Maybe starting with Duncan.
I knew that would come to me first. It's a hard one for me to answer because I've been using Drupal for so long. Google is your friend on these things. There are lots of places you can pay to get on courses. Drupalize Me, but there's lots of good places out there. The community is very good. Your best bet is almost certainly just to start using it. And when you have issues, jump on Google, ask the question, and see where you end up. Stack Exchange is very good for answering questions. Drupal.org itself has a community where they answer questions. There's issue queues if you have issues with any modules. So there's lots of places where you can get answers to the questions. In terms of learning it from zero, your best bet is to just install it and start playing with it. I'm one of these people who I'll study something for ages and ages and ages before I jump in, and I should just jump in because it's often easier than you think. So that's my recommendation. Just jump into it. I think one thing I will say is it's often easier to learn something when you have a reason to learn it. It's very hard to learn something. I couldn't learn Spanish, for example, if I wasn't going to go to Spain. If I was going to go to Spain, I'd learn Spanish. I think that's the same with a website. Think of a website that you want to build, and then build it. That's how I started with Drupal. I built a Drupal 6 snowboarding website, for example. I was into snowboarding. That's how I started with Drupal. I originally used something called PHP Nuke and Zakula, which people won't even probably remember because it's so old. But I decided to learn a new website, and I went around the CMSs and went, oh, Drupal looks cool. Actually, yeah, that fits with my mentality and how I want to create a website, how I think about my data sets and my fields and my nodes. And I just picked Drupal. So I think that the easiest way to learn anything is simply just to do it. I'm also a big believer in the trouser leg of time. I don't know if that's a real thing, but it's like when you have two options, just pick one, and that will be the option that works for you. The other option never existed. So just pick something that you like, whether that's Drupal or WordPress, and go down that route. If one doesn't work for you, you can always swap. But it's the only way to learn is to find problems and fix them.
Yeah, that's a brilliant answer. And I think very much echoes what Alessandro has written in our kind of chat piece within the Zoom webinar around the best option is just to get started and not wait around. To this question particularly, has anyone got anything there they would like to add?
I just put in a couple links in the chat. I do run a training program, so I have to mention that at Evolving Web. We do like more of like a real intro starting from zero, teaching all the fundamentals. But also next week is DrupalCon, and I know it can be a bit intimidating when you arrive at a DrupalCon and you're starting from scratch, but it's actually a great way to start meeting people. There are sessions at different levels, and especially this year, I was one of the chairs of the users and content kind of track. So that's much more about how to use Drupal and not necessarily how to become an expert developer right away. So there's content for everyone.
Brilliant. We have actually got another question here from YouTube from Doug, which is Layout Builder is okay, but it has many shortcomings. I have one project using Gutenberg. It is kind of cool, but in my opinion, it is a mess of React code, and I think I actually prefer Layout Builder. Does anyone think that Layout Builder will provide greater value in the future, or do we just watch Acquia and other dev shops offer their proprietary layout solutions? Maybe you could answer this then.
Yeah, let me jump on this because of the Acquia mention. We have Acquia Cyber-Duck, which is not designed to replace Layout Builder. And actually, Acquia, since the beginning, have been pushing on a lot of resources and efforts on Layout Builder, right? So if anything, Layout Builder is going to get better and better. At the moment, it's something kind of newish. We've had a lot of pain on making this to work, for example, with JSON APIs, but that kind of things are going to get better, right? On the other hand, Cyber-Duck, as I was saying, is not a replacement for Layout Builder. It's kind of augmenting what Layout Builder can do, right? It's giving site builders and marketeers a tool in which you can build your brand, your colors, you can build your components, but you can build from the header, footer, everything on your website, right? It's giving them full control, and it decouples completely the release cycles. So your development team are on their own doing their thing, and then your marketeers and are depending on, not depending, I mean, on the release cycles, deciding when they want to publish new features, new pages, without having to wait for those components to go to production, right? So they are not going to compete each other, never, because Acquia is as well putting a lot of trust on Layout Builder.
I think Layout Builder will start to see a lot more steam once other people help Tim Plunkett build it. I think it's been a very small concerted effort by a few individuals. So once we see some like the D7 users move over to Drupal 9, I think we'll see a lot more activity. Once all the hardcore panels users come to Drupal 9, we'll start to see that improvement, because I believe there's even ideas to get Layout Builder to control the entire page, which I think is what we call those like panels everywhere, like in Drupal 7. So there's initiatives for that. So once we can get more people to contribute, it can be, you know, more impressive, if you will, like panels. I mean, it's already impressive, but we can start to have those, like some of those small features that we might feel are missing from the panels ecosystem of Drupal 7.
And if you're looking for improvements instantly, there are modules to use, like contributed modules to use with Layout Builder that make the UX much better, especially for the use case where you want people to be creating landing pages with the layout builder, not just creating templates for content types. So there's specific things you can do now already, and it's going to much improve the UX. And by contributing to those, I think we're also kind of setting a standard for what could eventually go into core as improvements.
Yeah, and I think it's layout builders following some of the sort of track that Drupal itself is following. It came in as experimental in 8 point something, can't remember which one now, and then it was part of core in Drupal 9, in fact Drupal 8 and Drupal 9, and there are things that I don't particularly like about it. There's some things that don't work particularly well, but as Suzanne said, there's modules that country modules you can normally throw at it to fix some of those things, but it will gradually improve, and because it's fundamental to the making Drupal better out of the box, a lot of focus will be put on layout builder and making it super awesome. And that's what we want to say. We want to make creating websites much easier, less geeky, and more for marketers.
Thank you for that answer, Duncan, and a big thank you to all of our speakers and attendees today. That's it. If you still have any questions, you can reach us at hello@cyber-duck.co.uk. You can reach us also on Twitter at cyberduck_UK, or LinkedIn, where we are at company/cyber-duck. If you are interested in more information on getting started with Drupal 9, then we have a free white paper available on our website, which you'll find under Insights and Resources.